Here we go. All right, welcome. Welcome to day 3 of Intimacy and Integrity. And today we are diving into leadership. Over the last 2 days, we explored decolonizing and dismantling of old relationship schemas, as well as bringing our most taboo selves into our relationships and even our work. So, um, let me know in the chat how you're feeling today. I'm experiencing a lot in my body, and I want to take you through just a little bit of a grounding exercise before we get in today. I just want to I want to ask you or invite you to share in the comments, in the chat rather, how you're feeling. What are you noticing in your body? What are you sensing in your body? Low energy, feeling heavy. Yeah. Lots of tremors and excitement. Medium unrest. Lots going on this week. Yes, and I think that's part of what I'm feeling. Gush of energy, burning, agitation over online dramas. Yeah. That's good. It's good to know all of that. And we can just start our time today just with a little bit of a shaking out of some of that, just so that we can sort of feel ourselves underneath the agitation, and we can sort of build a wider container for that. Okay, so let's do that. What we're going to do together, it's just basically grounding, shaking out the body, just a guided shaking practice from the head all the way down to the feet. So I'm just going to put on a little bit of music. And I'm not going to put it on too loud. It's really low, so you can still hear me. I want to invite you to stand. Roll the bottoms, roll your ankles and roll your feet, getting into the heel of the foot and the ball of the foot, making some contact with the ground, tapping the foot. And giving yourself some nice long breaths, moving the breath down to the feet, bending the knees. As you're tapping your heels, moving the hips from side to side, you get deeper into the knees, activating the legs, because a lot of our energy moves up and out. You just want to bring it down closer to the ground, closer to earth. You may want to also take out the legs a little bit. As you breathe, relaxing the jaw. Letting go of tension in your face. Shaking up the legs. Making some sound. Maybe shaking out the arms. Needing to move your face. Bring expression to the face. Imagining that there is a sort of like a weight at your sacrum, pulling you down close to the ground. Right? So at the end of your spine, there's a weight, and it's pulling you close to the ground. So I want you to imagine that. As you shake out the shoulders, Take out some of the stuff that's been happening this week. Letting yourself, if you're feeling agitated, letting the agitation come out as sound. Or as movement. Letting it just be expression without there necessarily being any words to it. Let the head go. It wants to flop to the side, or it wants to just flop forward as you bounce a little bit into your heels. Just kind of shake out wherever you need the shaking out. Maybe there's a lot of hip shaking that you're doing, and I see some people swinging. That feels really good too. Opening up the chest. Wonderful. And so just pause for a moment here. Music. And so I just want you to pause wherever you are and just place your hands on your body, wherever it feels good to place your hands. And just feel your heart beating. Feel blood flowing in your body. Give yourself some nice audible exhales. Opening up the vibration in your belly. And it's between your belly button and pubic bone that you have the relational center. So I like to bring my breath there a lot. Wonderful. And just take note in this moment, just take note of where you are emotionally, how the energy is moving in your body. Just get a sense of thoughts. Yeah, just become aware and just whatever is here, just allow it to be here. Hold it gently. And let yourself settle into this, space to be together. And that you celebrate yourself for having taken the time to be here and to dedicate yourself and devote yourself to the topic of intimacy, whether it's with yourself or with another person, one another. Okay? So I've been just reveling in the timing of this topic, given everything that's going on this week. So, and I just want to acknowledge that, just in terms of just putting this all in context, in a bigger and sort of more immediate context. In the bigger context, right, since we're at this massive pivot point in history, and we're all in this peeling back of lies that we've been taught, and especially since November of 2016, we've been sort of really doing a lot of unearthing, and then since COVID, since the quarantine, we've been having to just spend more time with ourselves and with each other and do a lot of inner soul searching. And we're uncovering and taking down lies about ourselves, the trauma, the lies that we learned through our experiences with trauma. And that includes our collective brainwashing, and redefining what it means to be a leader, right? Because the leaders that we've had have not been leaders that we can trust. And so we're recognizing that each one of us has leadership skills, and that leadership is actually doesn't have to happen on a really big scale. It can be in the simplest. Your male person has leadership. How each of you shows up is your leadership, and it doesn't have to be hierarchical, etc. So we're in a big takedown, dismantling power structures, including the ones within ourselves. And we're recognizing how power is used and misused, whether power over someone, right, over someone else, or making yourself less powerful than someone else. It's sort of like a reverse narcissism, or learning how to share power. So healing these intimacy wounds is ultimately about power, because it gets to the core of how we exercise control and how we armor our hearts, right? How we close ourselves to each other, right? This is why the topic is around intimacy, because it has to do with heart listening and heart seeing. So whether on a larger, obvious governmental level or on a more interpersonal landscape, these dynamics of power and control are at play, right? So what I see in a lot of relationships, and I include even relationships with clients, if you're a coach or a healer, and this can happen in marketing, is the misuse of power, right? There can be abuse, in extreme cases, manipulation, bullying, gaslighting, submission, false victimhood. There can be codependency, control through helping, right? Rescuing, victimhood, martyrdom, overgiving. Some therapy models are, have sort of a codependency element to them, where the therapist is the guru, and you have to go to them and they give you the knowledge, right? There's shadow emergence, sabotage, fear, rage, gossiping, withholding, withdrawal, numbing, just reactivity, a lot of what's in reactivity. And fourth, the mask of competence, or serenity, or of power. And when I talk about mask, it's basically the ways that we bypass our vulnerability and our own humanity. Like, for example, a lot of times in the in the coaching world, you'll see online sort of this like front-facing bravado, like, I have the answers, come and do my method, and you'll do as well as I do, right? That's sort of the gist of the model. And really, like, yes, it's powerful, and yes, people are attracted to it, but it really bypasses like the whole story of what's happening underneath, and how, being an entrepreneur is challenging, and it's a whole spiritual journey, and right, we don't really see the whole person. We don't see the whole person. And for me, cancel culture is part of the way that we, where some of our intimacy wounds are coming out, right? And how these power dynamics are happening, right? Canceling someone is so easy. Like, when I think about my own shadow, like, it feels so good to cancel someone. It's easy, just shut them out, and I never have to be bothered by them again. I pull my love away. I get to feel self-righteous, and I get to feel right, and I feel powerful in it. So, as you know, there were things flying around this week, and what I observed, like, I was uncomfortable with the post. And what I chose to do in that moment is to wait. And yes, I obviously felt the desire to respond in some way, but I held myself and I waited. And what I observed was like a contagion of triggers happening. And it was just sort of a activation of lots of nervous systems and, you know, incrimination and labeling, right? And this is how we separate. And as I mentioned yesterday, social media and its algorithms are designed to hijack your brain, polarize, and create tribalism. It's here to activate your fight flight responses, and that is exactly what happened over this week. And look, I've been this happened to me too. Like when George Floyd was murdered last year, woof, I went on a month-long self-righteousness binge and anger and just like my upset, and I was having this whole argument with my somatic community, and I was, unfriending some people here. And what I noticed after a while is I was like, this is not okay. Like I noticed that I was in a pattern, and I was angry all the time. And I felt like in the morning I would wake up and I would be angry, and that anger would recycle as I thought about all the things that people were posting, da, 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 da. And then I was like, stop. And when I let myself feel underneath, and it was hard to get in there because that self-righteousness layer was really thick, what I felt was my pain, betrayal, grief, sadness, right? And yeah, I just felt like it was important to be with that pain and move through it before responding. And I'm just gonna say right now, like, we are not good as a species, or where we are in our evolution, we're not good at feeling our pain. And yes, people of color are having to, are experiencing a lot of pain because of the injustices and the inequalities that we experience because of how we've, like the racial categorization, racism, white supremacy, all of that has set us up. And part of, I'll get into this a little bit more later, but it's like we are still see ourselves as separate, and it's part of our problem. But back to cancel culture. I do believe in holding people to account for their actions and words. I believe in setting very clear boundaries. I do believe in protecting marginalized people. And there's a way that we expect perfection from people, and that ties into pedestalizing our leaders and mentors instead of seeing leadership as a horizontal experience, and we create that imbalance of power by looking to other people to guide us instead of finding that wisdom within ourselves. And yes, thoughtfulness matters, choosing your words carefully matters, context and intention do matter. And I also want to normalize making mistakes and repairing. I'll go into that again in a few minutes. So healing intimacy wounds and energizing your superpowers is your leadership, right? What we hold within us vibrates into our lives through our energy, our words, and our actions. And that's how we create our personal and collective reality. So as a collective, we're moving into an era, hopefully, that's where I see us going, of transparency and accountability that embraces and honors our fallible and beautiful humanity. And I also believe that our survival as a species and is dependent on our capacity to be in healthy relationship with one another. What that looks like for me is an increased internal range for complexity and discernment versus tribalism and perfectionism, right? We expect people who have power to be perfect. We engage in group thinking. And so what I feel we need to do as part of the survival of our species is create more space for allowing people to make mistakes, to come back from their mistakes, instead of judging, being more in a space of discernment, of deciding who you're going to give your time to versus like, oh, like I don't like that, and right, to have it be more reactive. The other piece of how it looks like from my perspective is emotional fluency and fluidity. What I mean by that is being able to ride emotion. And the truth is that we're not good at feeling, like I said earlier. We are not good at feeling our pain. We are not good, generally speaking, at processing grief. And I speak from my own experience that I have not, sometimes I'm not good at it. And sometimes I like, okay, I can roll through it. It's not about always doing it right again. But generally we don't have big spacious containers for all of our life experiences. And that, yes, that has to do with sensations in the body, that has to do with flow of emotions. Yes, we need to expand our nervous system to be able to hold all of our life force energy. And the truth is, like, as someone who has guided many people through the healing process, like, we don't have access to all of our life force. We're operating at like 40 or 50%, really. Through our socialization and conditioning, we don't have access to all of it. So this is something that I'm really passionate about, because it's like, we need to build that capacity to be able to hold all of who we are for our, and the more we can hold for ourselves, or of ourselves rather, the more we can hold out there, the more we can hold space for the people that we're serving, people that we're interacting with, people that we're in relationship with. So the other piece around this is awareness and integration of the primal fear-based defenses that get in the way of intimacy and connection. And those are the intimacy wounds, right? Understanding how in any given moment, they're like, they're always moving within us. And we have to be aware and sort of observant of like, okay, what's moving now? And what I learned in my training was like, we usually use 2 or 3 as our go-tos, and the other 2 not so much. And I have observed in myself that when I'm feeling threatened, I'll go to 1. If that one doesn't work, I'll go to the next one, and then the next one, and the next one. And if the 5th one doesn't work, I will go back to the first. So these capacities and strategies are very, very powerful. And then the piece around integrity here, right? Like, what it is to be in healthy relationship with one another is integrity with your own true nature, which is love. And so when I talk about love, I don't talk about it in a spiritual bypassy, we are one, oh, we're love. I actually talk like live love in a very practical and protective way. So again, this is all coming together. I'm doing this in my a little bit roundabout Puerto Rican way. So in the worksheet that I gave you for today, and I'll go into it in detail here, leadership, and whether it's leadership personal or like at home or in your business, is trauma informed, energy attuned, and relational. So what I mean by trauma informed is that we have to be aware and with whom, where, with whom, how our intimacy wounds are showing up. And this can be really, really subtle. Our bodies, specifically our nervous systems, are constantly scanning for safety, right? And especially nervous systems that have not felt historically safe, or that have experienced and continue to experience trauma. So this requires sort of an attunement to your nervous system and awareness. And frankly, because of epigenetics, because of unprocessed trauma of our ancestors, our bodies have accumulated so much pain that our nervous systems are highly fear programmed. We're like we're, you know, like piano wire, like really tightly strung. And where we are now, we're not good at being able to metabolize pain because there's so much of it. So it can be overwhelming. And really, like I see our capacity to metabolize pain as a skill, as agility, as emotional agility. So being trauma informed is noticing when our hearts shut down to one another, when you're not feeling other people's pain. So stay curious about that when that happens. Tracking how you use power and how you invite other people into their power. And what I feel here is that the real revolution that's happening is in loving ourselves and each other better. And what I mean by love, going back to that point that I was going to get back to, is that love is fiercely protected. I think about, a mom protecting her children. And I'm not talking just about like a dog or, an animal in the wild. Like I'm talking about like fierce human mama love is protective as heck. And we need to bring that love to protect each other from injustice. And this is how we create collective safety. So the energy, does anybody, please post your questions in the chat. I'm happy to come back to them. So what I mean by energy attuned is that we need to attune our energies for presence. And presence is simply the attention that you give someone. Like when somebody is with you, you're just with them. You're with them with your whole being. When they're talking, you're listening. You're not formulating a response. How you're gonna talk back to them. And we're all capable of sensing energy, and the people that are here are probably really, really energy attuned. You're high sensation people and sensitive feelers. And we all know we have the experience of meeting someone feeling like something's off, or we notice when the words don't match the energy, right? People are saying like, oh yeah, I really care about you, and then their behavior doesn't match up. And so being in healthy relationship, we need to be in the subtleties of relationships. And for that, we have to slow down. Like being in the present in relationship requires us to slow down. We're incredibly distracted in our daily lives, and we don't cultivate that presence, even with ourselves, right? And then even less so with the other person. And so sometimes it's so important to just pause and ask, hey, I just noticed something shifted. What happened? And this helps us see into each other. I was sitting with my girls at the table a few weeks ago, and we were having a conversation, and my oldest, who's 9, I was talking about an experience that I had when I was a kid, and all of a sudden I noticed her face change, and I was like, what happened? And she's like, I want you to stop talking. And she was having, something came up for her emotionally, and she's like, I don't want you to tell the story anymore. And I was able to be with her. But if I hadn't noticed that shift, and it was so micro, I would have missed this whole experience of being able to comfort her and to show up for her. So I'm just coming into the chat for a moment. Yeah, thank you for that. I can't tell when I feel fierce protective mama love versus feeling self-righteousness. Yeah, that is discernment, right? We have to be able to check in with ourselves and notice like where it's coming from. I can totally relate to that, because going back to the story I was telling about the part that I missed telling, and I thank you for bringing that up again, because last summer when I was in the self-righteousness kind of like right, I was feeling really protective. And then I had to get curious with that protectiveness, because there was so much charge behind it. There was so much electrical charge that's when I was like, let me slow down. And I realized After about a week of sitting with it, I realized that it was because I had to be, what was coming up was me having to defend or protect my sister when my father was attacking her, or protect my mother when my father was attacking her. And so I was the protector in my family. I was I was not protected. I was the protector. And so yes, again, looking at it from the perspective of gift, I am very protective. I am very protective of people. I'm protective of my clients. That's the fierce mama love, but I have to know what piece is mixed in with trauma history. Right? So that takes some discernment. Yes, so going back to the story about my daughter, pausing and noticing shifts in energy and naming them and using them as opportunities to see into each other, right? Intimacy, into me, see. I'd see into myself, I see into you. And that also creates safety. The third piece that I wrote up in the worksheets for today is prioritizing relationships and connections. So collaboration, connection, partnerships, sharing. I am all about that. And we're learning, we're all learning. I think that this is sort of the hard process that we're in right now. We're all learning to become more collective. We're having to shed the seduction of our individualism, of the me culture into we culture. And we've been in that, for several years already, so it's not super new. But it even goes into how we use our money, right? Several Black leaders have come under fire this week for, like, Sonia Renee Taylor was criticized for buying herself a car. And, nobody's talking about how Warren Buffett is spending his money. So there's that piece, and there's a piece of, like, if you hire someone to work for you and there's a clear power imbalance, whether it's through education or, any type of power imbalance, privilege, take care of them, pay them well, treat them well, honor their labor, thank them, treat them as whole humans. We're still not good at that. We're still kind of like have this expectation, and, like, there's like the serve me attitude. So connection can't exist without vulnerability. And sometimes vulnerability is just naming what is true right now. It could be something so simple. It could just be like, I'm feeling nervous, or I'm feeling scared, or, right? Just the truth. And that truth is medicine. So, and going back what happened to this week, I was watching people I have considered leaders bullying other people. I have, and I chose to wait this out because I chose to wait and trust that there was going to be a response, a responsible response. And sometimes waiting is really important instead of immediately going into reactivity and just being like, okay, so, like, let me give this person some space to think about what they did, because people are bringing their responses, and let's see what happens. Just giving this person the space to think about what they said and how they said it. So does anybody have any questions about what I shared, or have feelings about it? Even if you don't like it, you can bring your dislike. Yeah, April says, feeling like things were off, but they would lie every time, or say nothing was wrong when things were really wrong. Yeah, and that's, I have a long history of self-betrayal, so I know what that's like. And it's part of setting boundaries with ourselves, and that discernment of who gets to enjoy my energy, really valuing ourselves as energy beings. And it's boundaries is a huge part of heart-centered leadership. Really sharing it, protecting it so that you can share it freely. Good for you, April. So intimacy and connection and trust occur in the presence of safety. And I don't mean the kind of safety where you're not confronted by something. The kind of safety I'm talking about is the safety where repair can happen, right? Because I think that it is more important to see ourselves as fallible than anything else. But, and again, that isn't the, well, maybe I'll just say it now. I'll just say it now. Integrity, as I see it, is about repair and forgiveness. So integrity is so much more than doing the right or moral thing, because then we get back into, I gotta be right, or I gotta make it look right. So it's not a performance or a set of procedures. For me, it's about aligning with my heart. Am I in integrity with my spiritual truth? My spiritual truth is not to harm anybody else, because if I'm harming them, then I'm ultimately harming myself. It's not about perfection. Can I be with and accept my own humanity? Can I see your humanity? Right? When I think about that, it helps me. Like if I see somebody making a comment online that feels really harmful, I will approach them with that care, and I will call them in versus calling them out. I will be inviting them into an intimate conversation, checking, of course, if I have the bandwidth to do so. But, can I accept and forgive mistakes, cruelty, acts of separation, knowing that I do that too? Can I recognize and own my defense patterns and see what defense patterns are moving in you? Right? Telling the truth when I mess up, normalize messing up and taking ownership. So integrity issues for me, ultimately, like watching this week, lie in unaddressed trauma. It's not doing, when we don't do the continual flossing to master that internal balance of ego in our psyches, in our soma, in our bodies, there is reactivity all over the place. And a lot of what you see out in the interwebs is very informed, but it's not fucking integrated. It's not integrated. People have a lot of information and it hasn't made it from here down into the body. And that is, yes, I'm frustrated about that. And I want to be really clear that there's a major difference between knowing better and like the beingness of that, being it. So integrity is held in the body and it's felt, and it creates safety within in order for it to vibrate out to other people. And it's like containment of your whole energy system body without chronic unaddressed leaks. And so I want to share, we're going to be breaking out into some breakout rooms if I get my tech right. I want to share a quote with you. And this quote is from Gregory David Roberts, who wrote this incredibly thick book that I only got to make it halfway through, called Shantaram. And the quote goes this way: "It's forgiveness that makes us what we are. Without forgiveness, our species would have annihilated itself in endless retributions. Without forgiveness, there would be no history. Without that hope, there would be no art, for every work of art is in some way an act of forgiveness. Without that dream, there would be no love, for every act of love is in some way a promise to forgive. We live on because we can love, and we love because we can forgive." I'll share that in the chat. So before we go into breakout rooms, I just wanted to share something a little bit more private about myself and about repair, because it really speaks to sort of our multidimensionality. So my father and I have not always had a good history, and over the last, I'll say 20 years, it's improved. It's not a deep relationship, but it's really good enough where we talk, once a month, we share pictures, it's gentle. And over the last month, I've been dreaming a lot, and I've been asking my ancestors for repair of my relationships in the dreamscape. And what I dreamt a few days ago was that, and I kind of grew up sort of on my own. Like, my parents obviously took care of me. I'm alive now, but I spent a lot of time by myself. And I sort of had to do for myself a lot. I had to just kind of learn that, people weren't going to be around, so I had to just figure it out on my own. And in this dream, I was, living with my father, and he went and took a nap. And when he woke up from the nap, he said, "Oh my God, the house is flooding." And I was like, "Oh," and I looked around, and I was kind of like, I didn't have a big reaction to the house flooding. I was just like, "Oh, I'm gonna have to move again." And he's like, "Don't worry, I'm gonna call the plumber." And he called the plumber, he drained the bathtubs, he mopped up the floors, and he took care of everything. And in the dream, I allowed myself to be taken care of. And so for me, that was such a powerful dream in which, like, he showed up. He showed up in the dream in a way that, now he's showing up more in that way, but as a child, like, he didn't show up in that way. So I really believe in spiritual agreements, and sometimes our on this earth plane, we don't get to have closure. We don't always get to repair, but sometimes you get to repair on different dimensions. So I just wanted to pop that in there. So before we go into breakout rooms, do people have questions, or do people have thoughts? And you can even share your feelings about this week, and can be anything. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna do, let's see if I can, I don't know how many people are here. We have 10 people. Okay, that's perfect. We'll do breakout rooms. Oh, I have to run. Okay, all right. Run, Pamela. Love you. So I identify as a Latinx person, and I am informed by that experience. And I see the world through that lens, and it's not all of what defines me, right? So it's a both and versus whether there's racialization or humanization. So I feel like both need to be acknowledged, because we are living within a system that has tremendous amounts of inequality and discrimination and oppression. So it's like, there's a way that we have to be in those two worlds. And I think that's part of what takes that emotional fluidity and capacity, that we have to, like, be able to hold all of that. Yeah. All right. So maybe people can share what their experiences were in the breakout rooms, what that exercise, what it was like for you.
Can I start? It was really wonderful, exchange of energy and a nice, lovely chat. I don't know, before we break into the break room, and my energies told me that I'm going to get connected to Stacy, and I just got connected to her before the. I'm really shocked or surprised about it, but it just happened.
That's awesome.
Way to manifest.
Yeah. Do you want to share your experience, Stacey?
Sure. Yeah. I was actually surprised. I was cooking dinner or lunch, so that I didn't have my video on, and I was pleasantly surprised to see this fella, and that he mentioned he was the only masculine energy there. And I've been really working on healing not only my inner masculine, but also how the sacred masculine shows up in my life as that sacred container and the organization and the discipline, and letting the sacred masculine show up for me.
Mhm.
So it was really neat.
Awesome.
It's very pleasant.
Does anyone else want to share before we peace out today?
I really loved my time spending a room with Lee Tian, and it was really perfect exercise for me because I'm actually more comfortable in a group and speaking to a group, and the one-on-one felt very intense, energetic, that very high sensation that was something I would normally hide from, and being unable to hide was just a huge gift. I really loved it.
That's wonderful. Sounds good. All right, so let's close today with a song. I always like to, I think music really opens us up. So let me see. Let me find this.
I met a
Head up and
prophet,
move around.
dark as the night. She could see into my soul. Said she'd been watching and had some advice. She said shadows make you whole. A life without pain is a wolf in sheep's clothes. 'Cause if you listen to the lessons that it holds, you'll find the gold. Child, it's time to break the shell. Life's gonna hurt, but it's meant to be felt. You cannot touch the sky from inside yourself. You cannot fly until you break the shell. I can remember when I was a child, how the grown folks seem so crazy. Why are they so angry? Why are they so loud? And when I grow up, that's never ever gonna be me. That was the moment that I decided that I would build a wall just shy of 6 feet tall, too strong to fall. Child, it's time to break the shell. Life's gonna hurt, but it's meant to be felt. You cannot touch the sky from inside yourself. You cannot fly until you break the shell.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Your cat is your shadow. Yes. Love you all. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye.